story, but Fright Night is hands down one of my favorite horror films of all time. Probably number one. One sheet sits in my bedroom, so I wake up every morning and see it. And after I moved to Los Angeles, it was very cool because I got to become good friends with Mr. Tom Holland, the writer and director of Fright Night. So, needless to say, this is a very, I think this is like the end-all be-all panels because we fucking have everybody out here. So let's just bring them out. Tom Holland, and stars, and Bearse, Sarandon, Ragsdale, Geoffreys, Sarandon, and Steve Johnson. Does everybody have a seat?
Jonathan is center stage? Really? How did you get
I think I got it on video, him talking about it a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I want that.
So this is usually kind of like a last end of the Q&A question, but I want to start with it because obviously we have a sea of people, a sea of fans out here, 32 years later, all coming out for this film. I mean, I just want to hear your guys' reaction to this. I mean, what is the enduring power of Fright Night? Because obviously it's found its audience, it's still discussed, they've remade it, they sequelized it, there was a comic book, there was a video game. I mean, for you guys, what does it represent to you? We'll go down the line. Tom, for you, sir, you came out of your brain.
You mean what has made it last so long?
Yeah.
Boy, thank you all. The truth is, I never occurred to me that this would happen. And about, I don't know, I was oblivious until 15 years or so ago. And all of a sudden, I don't like to fly, but so I've gone to conventions in LA because I can go there, drive there. And all of a sudden people would end up coming up to the table and there'd be 3 generations. And I realized that the people who see it, maybe people were showing it to their children, and their children were showing it to their grandchildren. And I thought, well, I think this was our film when it came out. And now I know why, but Fright Night has become something that has been passed down from parent to children. And that's phenomenal. And no, I did not have a clue. And I think a lot, it's due to everybody here. But
That all sounds great, Tom. I think it's the effects.
I wrote it out of my being a fan, but I wrote it about the Hammer films and the AIP films that I've grown up with. You know, the Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, so they were my heroes. And I think that the affection that I felt for the genre, I thought, you know, I think that's one of the reasons it's going on. I was writing Cloak and Dagger, which was shot down here in San Antonio. And I thought, well, what I'd really like to do, it was supposedly a remake of The Window, which is the Cornell Woolrich's juvenile version of Rear Window. And what I really wanted to do with that was have the kid see a vampire next door. And I couldn't go that far away from the window. So when I finished writing Cloak and Dagger, I spec Fright Night. And I think maybe also it's because of Peter Vincent. Yeah. that Roddy put in it, along with everybody else. Everybody did a star turn, and I could really diagnose you why. I mean, because I wrote it and I looked at the dramatic moments. But Jerry Andrews, the vampire who's got a bleeding heart for Nina Harper, and who is really Amanda reborn, and you've got a wonderful character turn by Stephen Geoffreys down there.
Oh my gosh.
Great. Then you have Bill Ragsdale carrying the whole thing. Bill's the machine that makes it go. He's the one that's motivated to find out who it is carrying the coffin.
But he's not sitting center stage.
And no, I do not know what he is. You had all these wonderful people, and I was blessed with luck in terms of production because I got the effects crew in Los Angeles at the time. Steve Johnson, Randy, and everybody else associated. I got the entire Ghostbusters effects team that moved over to this small film. And then I got one of the most prestigious actors in Hollywood, Chris Sarandon.
I think Tom doesn't take enough credit because I know that the first time I read the script, and at the time when I was one of the most important, somebody sent me a script for Fright Night, and I thought, as I looked at the title page with the fangs coming down from the ends of the letters, and I thought, I can't. This is so hard. And I'm a very high class, very important actor. And as soon as I read the script, I turned to my second wife. and I said, I gotta meet this guy, because this is a great script. And I went out to Hollywood and I met Tom and Herb Jaffe. And Tom sat and described every shot of the movie, from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. It was all in his head. It was also a page, but the actual shooting sequence and the atmosphere was in Tom's head. And as soon as he finished that, I said, let's go, let's do this thing. And then everybody fell into place.
We don't always get the pleasure of having Tom with us. It's really a special event to be here and have this lineup. But when you're not with us, Tom, what we say is that it does begin and end on the page. It's all about your script and the love.
Let's hear from the rest of the cast as well. Like your initial impressions reading this, after listening to you, Tom, I think what everybody responds to is just those classic storytelling tropes that work time and time again. And what you did is you contemporized it. You made us care about Charlie and everybody else. Yeah. Did you guys connect with that as well? Can you just talk about your first impressions?
I was in acting school in San Francisco and had been doing Shakespeare and Chekhov and
You were a very important San Francisco actor.
Yeah, I was nonprofit San Francisco actor. And I got it and read it and I thought, well, this is a lot of fun. I mean, I wonder if a classically trained actor should do this kind of thing. But so I read that. I had met the casting woman, Jackie Birch, who cast virtually every movie you've seen from the 80s and remember. I had met her on another project, and I phoned her to say I was going to come visit in LA, and she told me to come in and read for this thing, gave me the script, and I just carried along with it as well. I love the story, and I love the concept, you know, because it was kind of a vampire story that was that had been done. It was the genre that had been done a lot, and almost to death, I think as Tom sometimes says, but set in a normal American town, regular people, kids, and that really attracted me. So
up until that point, I mean, the vampire subgenre had kind of simmered a little bit. It kind of died with the hammer.
The vampire genre was dead.
Yeah.
And play on words, but you had George Hamilton in Love and Life. When you go into farce, it means the genre's exhausted. And you had Love at First Sight, but you also had an enormous failure with Robert Wise directing the musical of Dracula. So nobody wanted to go near vampires. And I love vampires. And I was a very, very hot, in-demand writer at the time because of the success of Psycho 2.
Steven.
Well, I love the relationships in the film, and I think it is one of the sexiest things about vampires is that they are very human, and I think that was explored wonderfully, personally. And but also the relationships among the young, the folks in the film were very real and contemporary. And it's that humanity, it really is, I think, that reaches a lot of people and why you go really on a ride. It's not a one note. You really go up and down, and it's funny, and it's poignant, and it's scary.
For you, Steven and Bill, for you guys, what kind of directing tools did Tom bring to the table to help build your guys' relationship, the teenage relationships amongst the three of you? Did you guys hang out on set? How much time did you have, rehearsing, I should say?
Like Amanda said, I mean, it was pretty much all there on the page, and, the characters and their through lines were so specific that, and I remember Tom instructing me, on the laugh, that he wanted it. I didn't want to do it. I really didn't. And he came to me and he actually shook me and said, Steve, do you realize how important this is? And he did it. And I was like, okay. And so, he knew exactly what he wanted from when he first started writing it until the shooting. So, I totally trusted him, and, that's it. And sometimes it's hard to trust certain directors, but he's the guy.
He's meticulous in the writing of it, obviously, and planning of it. But we also had a unique opportunity as movie actors to have had a rehearsal time. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal, and we blocked the house out, we blocked the sets out on an empty sound stage, and rehearsed it like a play, and we developed the characters and wrote biographies, and we just got as deep into it as we could, which you really don't get to do a lot, unless you're a big star in a big movie or something like that. But we were, I'm not sure why we had that time.
I've never had it again. Well, because the studios won't pay you got to pay for the actors, even though it's rehearsal time, so I've never been allowed it since.
Wait a minute, the actors got paid?
What I have is also theater-trained actors. I mean, these were not people who were, in 2 minutes. These were serious actors. So spend too much rehearsing it, break it down, look at the characters, try to find the moments, break out every moment. I hardly had to say anything once I started to shoot because I'd seen the scenes working already in rehearsals, and I was able to run it. What he's talking about is I taped all the parameters of the rooms out on a soundstage, and we did it with some folding furniture, and within the parameters laid out with white tape, and it worked like a play. The whole thing played. It should be put on the stage after. And it was amazing experience.
One of the great things about working with Tom, too, is that Tom was always open to suggestions. I mean, he didn't take every suggestion, but this is a guy who wrote his script. He wrote the script, and he could have been this director who's like, no, this is what I wrote. I know it works. Just do it this way. And Tom was always open to trying new stuff. I mean, I had regard evidence of all this stuff. And I just threw that in. I think that was during the audition I threw it in. But he was like, yeah, do it.
It was. I had comedy built throughout the scenes, throughout the script, but it came out of the situation. It wasn't a wink at the audience. It was within the reality of the situation to find the humor. That's how Amanda really ended up there. Because Amanda could act, but she could also give you a grin. What she went on to do, in that TV series.
I think the operative phrase is, and we've repeated this probably over and over again, is that when you're working in a genre that has a certain kind of exhaustion to it, if you make fun of it, like it was when it was reaching its nadir, then it's over. But if you can have fun with it, and at the same time keep the serious through line, then it works, and it did.
Yeah. So it's very, very hard to
Yeah, the whole time was a fine needle to thread, Tom. You did a great job. Chris and Jonathan, I just want to ask you guys, there's been a lot of fan theory about your relationship in film. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the relationship between Jerry and Billy.
Well, I didn't even cross my mind until, one of the shots in the scene where he's got his hand, I'm bandaging his hand, and I'm kneeling down in front. Tom says, kneel down in front of him. Okay, that makes the shot better, I'll do it. I'm watching it, I go, oh my God.
The more touching moment is when Chris reaches out to Evil Ed and he says, "Here, take my hand. Nobody will ever hurt you anymore."
And I think everybody recognizes we're in a period now where bullying is evident. Yeah. And we all, even if we don't experience it firsthand, we understand what it's like to be bullied. And I think that's one of those emotional touchstone moments in the movie where people go, oh God, I know that bully. I know that situation. I know that moment. And those are the things we were always trying to find, the human moments. Well, let's turn to the effects end of things. Steve Johnson, who's got a great book called Rubberhead. I advise all of you to get it and read it. There's a good look inside the effects industry. Now, Steve, this was you were well into your effects career. So when this script showed up, what got you excited? What put a big grin on your face?
Well, I mean, I had done American Werewolf and the Howling.
Yeah.
American Werewolf with Baker, the Howling, the Bravo team. And so here was an opportunity to create, for me, the definitive werewolf.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go crazy. And so we did a lot of very drug-inspired techniques to really make them transform. And even different body parts would transform with their techniques. And so that was pretty crazy. But one thing I couldn't wrap my head around was, why the hell do vampires physically transform? So we haven't seen that since Nosferatu, how many decades before? And I'm like, is the audience really listening to all of this? This is nuts. But this is what happened, and guess what? What was the next big vampire movie? Created a trend, Lost Boys. They transformed. Now they always transform, up to the vampire slave. But tell you that Tom and I only recently repaired our relationship over that goddamn shark mouth.
Which is, you know, which made the poster.
As well as Tom was prepared, like the day before that scene was meant to be shot, he comes to Randy Cook and I, who co-ran the monster shop.
When I post this, it's going to be one of my tag words, cocaine.
And I'm like, but when you want to shoot, he goes, tomorrow morning. I'm like, what? And Randy goes, I'll do it. It'll only take me a couple hours to film. When I come home real quick, we'll run the film overnight. And I'm like, Randy, this thing wasn't paid for. And besides that, even worse, it's not going to work. It's going to be this big, ridiculous, cartoony clown mouth. It's not going to move. We're going to look like assholes. And so, and Tom assured us it would be in one quick, bam, quick, shot cut. And the next day, we shoot on and on and on. And I thought my career was over. And then, as you said, Ryan, it's the poster. So what do I have?
The truth of what happens in film, and I think Chris maybe mentioned this, but I was watching that scene with Amanda and Charlie, and all of a sudden I realized that she turned away. It's in the basement when she's about ready to go for him. When she turned away, she's guilting him and saying, "Promise to protect me," and then of course he weakens and he starts forward to comfort her, and she turns, and she's got that mouth, and I'm trying to be polite, maybe not, but psychosexually, that's every man's nightmare. So it was such a good moment in terms of the cutting. Nothing was all sex. And it was such a strong moment for the cut, and I only thought I'd use it for the cut, for the reveal. But then it was so good, and everything was working so well, and she chased him into the shark's mouth in the basement, and that's what drove him crazy. And then it became such a strong moment when it was edited together. We used it on the one sheet.
Like I said, what do I know? I read the Ghostbusters script and thought it was going to be a bomb.
Can you guys just give us your fondest recollections working with Roddy?
We were the pisher actors, the young actors just starting our careers, and not only with Roddy, but with Chris also, we were treated with such respect and equanimity, and it really creates, along with Tom, a very safe environment for us to bring the best of what we could. And Roddy was just the loveliest, most gracious man, just everything you think about that he could be, he was. And we also got the pleasure, he was a walking icon, walking Hollywood history. So when we would be on our marks and having to wait until they tweak the lights, and he would just start talking and telling us stories that were amazing. That you would not have that experience from almost anybody else, because he knew everybody since what, 1938, 39 in Hollywood. And he didn't talk about it in a posturing way. It was just that, no, we were just sharing in the experience of it with him, just like we were in the present moment. So it was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, he was extraordinarily generous and approachable and accessible for the beginners among us, and it made us feel very much as an equal, and and we were all in it together, and he was a great guy. He would love this, I think. He would love what this has become, and being here with us.
He's probably in it. No, it's his spirit, really truly, as Tom mentioned. His spirit, and it's the irony is he was kind of a B actor. He knew everybody from the A-list on, but he embraced that about Peter Vincent. And so again, there wasn't any arrogance towards the character. He really lived it.
Actually, in consent.
Yeah, I originally wanted Vincent Price, and Vincent was failing, and I ended up having dinner at Roddy's house with Vincent Price and his wife Carl Brown, and I didn't get an autograph. But the engine, what makes the movie go, is Charlie Brewster. the heart of the movie is Peter Vincent, because he's a man who's terrified, but because he loves others, he finds the courage in himself to go help Charlie Brewster walk into Jerry Dandridge's house. And you see the struggle that he goes through on his face. And, you know, and so there's a warmth. It's a horror film, but it's not a horror film. Because it's full of humanity and warmth and how we would all like to act under duress. You know, in that sense, it's wish fulfilling. But, you know, it's got a lot of feeling in it.
Well, Tom, I don't know, right? Every good horror film should have a great drama at its core. You know, that's definitely what this has too.
I would say too that my experience with Roddy was that he was just a real and great human being, and you really don't expect that when you're just starting out acting. That the stars and Chris was the same. I mean, I was terrified to work with Chris because I was such a huge fan of his Broadway afternoon. They were both such nice people and honest and down to earth. It made everything so much easier for me. Now he's a jerk.
Another thing that Roddy did, I don't know if everybody is aware of, but he was very active. He was very active in the actors' home in Los Angeles, which is entirely home for actors from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. And he would go out there and he would raise funds for them, and he would go and visit them and talk to them and be engaged with them. So he was, like Tom, was a fan, you know, as much as anything else. And he was a supporter and engaged back in ways like that, you know, are not always advertised or well known.
Roddy carried the oral history of Hollywood. He said to me that Hollywood had no history, and it's true, because it's swimming with sharks. It's about how much you can pay me today. There's no yesterday, but for Roddy there was. So Roddy would tell stories. He went out to the motion picture home to visit the last of the big silent movie stars, and I wish that I could remember, but I can't anymore. I told Roddy he should write his autobiography. I fled with him. And he said he wouldn't because he really did know where the bodies were buried. He had gone to children's school. He'd gone to grade school at 20th and the middle school at MGM. So he had never known anything else from the age of 7 on, except the motion picture business. And he'd grown up with people like Elizabeth, literally since children, like Elizabeth Taylor. That's why they were so close. Betty Davis. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And he took me and walked me through MGM on the last week that they were open as MGM. And he pointed out every soundstage and every dressing room and told me every scandal in that studio in the 40s and 50s, and he remembered the locations they happened at. Where Katharine Hepburn met Spencer Tracy outside the Thalberg building, walking into the studio, point to the spot. With Judy Garland's suite, who was doing what with who. And so I just sit there and I listen, just, spellbound. And that was Roddy.
Tom, did you get any interference from the studio in terms of, I mean, at the time Fright came out, every horror film was trying to outdo the previous horror film, the next horror film was a big hit. For you, doing a vampire film in the studio system, were you getting any execs saying a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that?
Ryan, I'll never understand it. I had absolutely no creative interference on the night.
Wow.
Sarandon is no longer with us. Guy McElwain is now long gone. And every other film that I have done has been interfered with by the studio for powers to be. I mean, after Fright Night was wonderful, Nirvana Heaven, and after that, 25 years of hell.
on the set every friggin' day. And literally, there were times when I had to restrain Tom. I think it's one of the reasons why he hired me on the movie. Because he knew I would run interference for him. But he was constant. They were at him every moment of every day. Why isn't this happening? You're behind, you're behind, you're behind. Why is this taking so long? It's dispiriting after a while. But that movie turned out okay.
Yeah.
We were going into new territory and the doll did not work.
Why the hell didn't you hire me?
Well,
The shark mouth incident.
12 different heads. They changed head for every different facial expression. But it was hell making that doll work. And the studio came to me and said, cut the doll in the third act. And I said, no Chucky, no third act.
So what changed, Tom? And what do you think changed between the time you made Fright Night and Child's Play? What changed in the industry?
Well,
I mean, Fright Night did well, right? I mean, when it opened?
Well, Child's Play was a huge.
Well, no, Child's Play, I'm talking about Fright Night, though.
Yes, but I don't know.
The horror
It
movie
was the corporatization of Hollywood. If you want to get into the weeds, it began with Coca-Cola buying Columbia, which happened when I started Fright Night. So I started Fright Night where you could still have, some great pirates like McElwain. There were 1 or 2 spots a year that you could choose to take a flyer on a film. And that's what Fright Night was. The film that we were paying attention to was Perfect. John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis. That's what it. Does anybody remember Perfect?
Yeah.
Well, they paid no attention. They thought Perfect was where the money was, and they were actually stunned to see Fright Night. When I first put it together. But then the corporatization began because you had Coca-Cola bought Columbia. Allen and Company made a ton of money factoring the deal. It was Raystar. Raystar owned Hollywood, or certainly owned Columbia at that point. They did what Concordia did, they resold it, and every time they bought it back and resold it and bought it back, and every time they did it, they gutted it. There is, it's what Ronnie said, there's no history. I remember on the last day that MGM was there, and now Sony, they walked the MGM line out the front gates, literally the line. And I and my wife and Roddy went to the famous MGM library where they had all the books, all the, years, decades of getting all this material that had a good period from this. And the librarian was in there and he was crying. He was crying because they were throwing away all the stills and they were throwing away books into bins. And I should have grabbed every still I could get my hands on. But you know what, I did. But anyway, I think that's the story. I was over at a meeting at Sony, which used to be MGM, and now you can't look down a road because there's so many different buildings there. Look, they corporatized it, and it became all about bottom line. And then there was no room to take a flyer on anything. And you don't want to get me started on executive.
Well, that's an executive. I was saying that. I think I'm opening the floor to questions up here. Question is, what did you guys think of the remake with Holland?
Chris was wonderful.
For about 30 seconds. The people were extraordinarily respectful of the original. They loved the original. They thought the original. Colin Farrell came into my trailer the first day I was there, literally shaking. He was so nervous because he was such a big fan of the original. And I think that the trap here is that they called it Fright Night, first of all, and secondly, that they called it a remake rather than a reimagining of the movie. And Greg Gillespie, the director, a lovely guy, the whole cast was terrific. Nothing's like the original for anything except maybe the Godfather movies.
You would think you would think that they would say to themselves, what made the first one work? What made it commercial? They could have called what they call the remake any other title. It was a potato head, made up of whatever the last vampire film was that had enjoyed any financial success. So all of a sudden, Jerry Dandridge becomes the vampire out of 30 Days of Night. All of a sudden, Charlie Brewster is not motivated. He doesn't see Jerry Dandridge taking a coffin into the house. They give that to Evil Ed, who was really Egg Muffin. What was Egg Lovin' with Muffin?
Get off the fence, Tom.
They could have called it. It was a very respectable film. They certainly had enough money. I heard the true figures were around 50. I think they claimed 30, but I heard 50. But it was made up of, it's having a meeting of 10 executives trying to figure out what bits and pieces to choose to put together to try to make something that will make money. Okay, and of course I get mortally offended, but you'd think that they would ask what made the first one work, and then they would try to capture some of that lightning in the bottle. But in their arrogance and stupidity, not bitter, you understand, mainly arrogance, because they think you're dumb, all right? They think you don't know. And that they can sell you on their merchandising, and they can sell you on their marketing. But the truth is, the most valuable and most powerful thing in Hollywood is word of mouth, which means you really have to make something that moves or grabs or touches the audience. And that's a magic that they're not going to find in group meetings.
All right. One more question.
Mr. Holland, please write us a new movie. Mr. Geoffreys, you broke my heart when I was 14. Your death, so heartbreaking. Thank you. Mr. Ragsdale, did you get to meet Elmore Leonard? And if so, what was he like?
No.
Oh.
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay.
I had dinner with Dutch Leonard.
What was he like?
Querulous.
Arrogance.
Want to know the truth? I'm a huge admirer of his. I was friends with Judge Marvin Mounce in West Palm Beach. Marvin Mounce was the prototype for the character in Dutch's book called Regular John. Okay, so I had dinner with Marvin and Marvin's wife Polly and Elmore Leonard. And I am a huge admirer of his writing. But at the same time, I know that in 1983 or 84, he wrote a book called The Touch, which I think was made into a movie, and he could not get the book published. After being, one of the top Western writers from the 50s on, he could not get the book published. And his career was in the toilet. And I made the mistake of mentioning that. And he was not happy to be reminded of that. But anyway, I think he's an absolutely terrific writer, but he was a querulous older gentleman.
It's made me very nervous that Dracula's just hanging out back there. Standing off the side. Question right here.
Obviously, one of the biggest things that helps with one of the things that I think brings everybody here is the humanity in characters. So I have to ask, I know everybody else has thought, or at least lots of other people have thought about it. In another universe, were Charlie and Jerry friends? Because obviously, or at least from my perspective.
If I ever finish writing Fright Night 3, yes, they band together. And Jerry has to find his lost love, who's constantly reborn. Her. Which is the one that I took off of, and that's why Chris in the movie looks down at the painting of her, and you hear him say, and you know that he had a past. His curse, he gave was cursed to be. He gave himself to be a vampire to save his own people,
And the curse is that he will always love this woman throughout eternity. And whenever he meets her again, she's killed, and he loses her. And that's the curse of the vampire.
Different question. Chris, tell me you held on to that sweater during the night club sequence. Please tell me you still have it.
We had a shopping trip, remember Tom? You and I and the costume designer, we went to Fred Siegel. And Tom kept saying, gray, gray. I want gray, I want texture, and I want gray. And we found these great sweaters, those great slacks, the wonderful, that coat, that leather coat was made, wasn't it? It was fabricated.
You had a heart attack when you first saw it.
Oh, Jesus. I thought, first of all, I weighed about 75 pounds. And also, I was afraid that I was going to have to fly in it. Anyway, no.
In the basement?
Oh, but not in that coat. No, I don't have the sweater. I had a lot of the clothes for a while, and then, it's, 35 years ago? No, I don't have any left.
All right, right there. The question is if you had done Fright Night 2.
That's not a fair question because I adore Tommy Lee Wallace. And he's a terrific guy. I know too much of the reality. They ran out of money at the end. Bill Ragsdale can tell you about Fright Night 2. And somebody made a mistake with the burn of the female vampire. And the burn went like that, so there was no power to it. And that was a production problem. I don't know why it burned so fast. They got tight on the budget towards the end, didn't they?
I think
They were tight on the budget when they started.
I think Mike
He got his paycheck.
I think I did. I don't know. I mean, the story that I heard you ponder about is that they just wanted to make. They weren't using the studio to make the second one. It was just Wayne Vista, right? He was making. So I guess they had a initially much smaller budget to begin with, and they just were waste and cut costs.
That was a time when every sequel they lowered the budget, and the name was hoping they'd lower everything, cheapen down everything, and hoping the name would carry it. And that was Fright Night 2. You had a lot of talented people who worked there, and I think this was what they had to work with. They did a terrific job. But they did not have the resources and the support that I had on Fright Night 1.
And up the back here? Yep.
Huge fan of all of these. One of my favorite movies for 27 years. I love your rant about the Fright Night remake. It's totally true. It was awesome. And I think that I'm a huge fan of Fright Night 2. Have been forever. So I'm glad that was actually brought up. You totally brought such high energy to that movie and you made it work so well. And there's such a great cast, just like you guys up here did that as well. And your performance in the first Fright Night was phenomenal. And I've always identified as Charlie Brewster. I guess what I'm saying is you're so cool, Brewster. My question, I guess, is I love Fright Night 1 and 2. If you could go on to Fright Night 3, forgetting Tom's script, if you could do it. It sounded great, but if you could do Fright Night 3, what direction would you take Charlie Brewster?
I have a spaceship, first of all. I don't really know. I mean, I sort of like the idea of them joining forces as well, and I have pondered the idea a little bit. I would see, maybe you could sort of extend Tom's original notion of an old school versus new school plot twist. Maybe maybe vampire and Charlie trying to prevent something even, finding a common ground to prevent something even more horrific from occurring, some sort of, plague or invasion or something like that. I don't really know.
And we're also living in a time when there are blood diseases.
Yes. Blood diseases.
We should bring in two guys back.
All of them.
We would have reunited and been married.
Yes. We're arguing about who's picking up the kids. And then Ann, our neighbor, comes over and she wants the arms to stop.
One more question, we're gonna wrap up. Waving your hand, way in the back right there with the hat. Yep.
He played it, ask him.
I don't know.
I needed somebody to guard him during the day, to guard Jerry Daniels, who could go out in daylight. And I was thinking of Dracula's Renfield. And this was my Renfield. So I figured he was a halfling. He'd been bit, but he hadn't, not enough blood had been transferred to carry him over into a creature of the night.
Well, then why did I melt?
Because it was visually spectacular.
All right, everybody, let's give up the Fright Nights.